Ton coming up here on the Ben Shapiro Show. Gavin Newsom is launching his redistricting effort in the most colorful possible way. President Trump is unleashing ICE right outside that redistricting effort, which is highly amusing. Plus, we get to Taylor Swift's album and male cheerleaders in the NFL and all the rest. First, how would you like a chance to win a trip to Nashville for yourself and a friend to meet me and experience a live taping of this show at the Daily Wire headquarters? Well, when you pre-order my new book, Lions and Scavengers, and register it at dailywire.com/Ben, everyone will receive the first 2 chapters of the book immediately. You'll also be entered for a chance to win 1 of 10 limited edition hoodies, 1 of 5 personal phone calls from me. Yes, I will call you, which is something most members of my family can't even say. And 1 lucky winner and their friend will win a free trip to Nashville to meet yours truly. Head on over to dailywire.com/Ben to register. That's dailywire.com/Ben. Void where prohibited. Terms and conditions apply. Maybe I'll see you soon. Also, it's summer's last stand. Days are getting shorter. Grills are going cold. Coffee shops are already trying to seasonally gaslight you with that pumpkin spice nonsense. Be first in line for everything coming to Daily Wire Plus before the fall chaos hits. Stream the brand new The Pope and the Fuhrer, the secret Vatican files of World War II. Michael Knowles just cracked open 80 years of Vatican secrets the history books forgot to mention. This fall, the Isabel Brown show premiere. She'll be joining the show a little bit later on, by the way. It's a new voice for a new generation of conservatives who actually know what a meme is. Plus, the decade of the Daily Wire anniversary show celebrating 10 years of upsetting all the right people. You get all of it, plus news from the most trusted voices in conservative media and unfiltered, uncensored opinions you can't get anywhere else. Summer ends, freedom doesn't. Get 40% off a new annual Daily Wire Plus membership right now. Join millions just like you at dailywireplus.com. Well, Gavin Newsom, the California governor, he is running for the nomination for the Democratic Party in 2028, and he has a plan, a redistricting plan. I know, very, very exciting stuff. He is acting all hot and bothered about the fact that the Texas state legislature is going to redistrict, which they are allowed to do by all available and applicable law in the state of Texas. California, they're really not supposed to do this. In California, the state constitution says that you redistrict every 10 years with the census, and also that there is an independent commission that is supposed to be doing the redistricting. Well, now Gavin Newsom has decided it's his moment. Now, Gavin Newsom believes that it's always his moment. That's the thing about Gavin Newsom. He has never not had a moment. Just in the last few months, you've had the Gavin Newsom moment over the fires where he blamed President Trump somehow for giant fires that were happening in his state. And then you had the Gavin Newsom moment over illegal immigration, where he claimed that President Trump was trying to fascistically take over the state of California. And now the third Gavin Newsom moment in the past 6 months, he is now claiming that he is going to redistrict the state of California in order to fight back against those evil Texas state legislators who are attempting to redistrict and put the state more in line with its actual political proclivities. Well, according to the Wall Street Journal, California Democrats are planning their own redistricting effort to counter President Trump's push for a new congressional map in Texas to create more Republican House seats. So he laid out a plan on Thursday to redraw the state's congressional maps to put Democrats in position to flip 5 seats in the 2026 midterm elections. He called for a special November 4th election to put the maps before California voters. And he said we have to meet fire with fire. Here he was yesterday explaining his plan.
We'll be asking for the people on November 4th, a special election coinciding with a lot of local municipal elections, to provide a temporary pathway for congressional maps. We will affirm our commitment to the state independent redistricting after the 2030 census, but we're asking the voters for their consent to do midterm redistricting in 2026, 2028, and 2030 for the congressional maps to respond to what's happening in Texas, to respond what Trump is trying to excite.
Now, you might be saying to yourself, wait, hold up. I thought that California was one of the states that has an independent redistricting commission in an attempt to prevent things like what Gavin Newsom is doing right now. And the answer is they do. That's true. And also, California does not have very many Republican seats in the first place. In fact, the state of California is split about 60-40, Democrat to Republican, but Democrats hold an extraordinary number of seats in the state of California, like many, many more seats than 60%. And yet he wants to redistrict anyway. Why? Well, as a response to President Trump's supposed craziness, here's Gavin Newsom suggesting we have to fight fire with fire, which again is sort of a bad metaphor for him to be using, considering his state is legitimately and literally on fire every couple of months, thanks to his forestation policies.
We have got to recognize the cards that have been dealt. And we have got to meet fire with fire. And we've got to be held to a higher level of accountability. So that's what this is about. It's not complicated. We're doing this in reaction to a president of the United States that called a sitting governor of the state of Texas and said, find me 5 seats.
California currently has 52 congressional seats, and 43 of them are held by Democrats. So that's a lot more than the percentage of the population of California that is actually Democrat. So they're going to fight fire with fire by doing more of what California has been doing all along. Just to demonstrate, by the way, what a sham the Independent Redistricting Commission is generally in the state of California, because California is indeed fairly highly gerrymandered. The Independent Redistricting Commissioner, Sarah Sadwani, showed up to say that her authority should be taken away from her and they should simply redraw the maps without any independent redistricting authority, which shows how independent she was in the first place. Not that she's a Democratic tool or anything. Here we go.
We have witnessed masked gunmen kidnapping our neighbors off the streets, and my understanding is they're outside waiting to do it again. We have seen not just the toleration of political violence, but the encouragement of it on January 6th against nonpartisan election officials, and the deployment of the National Guard in our cities, turning our cities into police states. And if that wasn't enough, we are watching executive overreach that no doubt is making our founding fathers turn in their graves.
So she seems like a very independent commissioner. She probably is not a Democrat at all, probably. By the way, her normal day job is that she is a professor of politics specializing in Asian American and Latino voting behavior, elections, interest groups, and representation at Pomona College. So obviously, this is a person with no political priors at all. Now, there is a problem for the Democrats in California, and that is that the Californian voters are not particularly interested in doing any of this. According to a new poll by a 2-to-1 margin, voters prefer keeping an independent line-drawing panel to determine the state's House seats. Only 36% of respondents back returning congressional redistricting authority to state lawmakers. Jack Citron, a veteran political science professor at UC Berkeley, said, quote, "It's not surprising in the sense that California has voted twice for this independent review commission not all that long ago. There's a lot of mistrust and cynicism about politicians and the legislature, and that is reflected here." That's according to Politico. So it's a problem for Gavin Newsom. But in essence, does Gavin Newsom actually care about any of this? Of course he does not. Of course he does not. If he wants to take the California Democrats from 43 of 52 possible seats in California to 48 of 52 possible seats in California, now that's nothing new. That's nothing special. He was just prevented by the California Constitution from doing it. And if, in fact, the voters stop him, well, he can still say he tried his best, which is the most important thing, because Gavin Newsom is interested in one thing and one thing only, and that is running for president in 2028. Which is why he continues to promote the lie that President Trump is going to run for an unconstitutional third term in 2028. Here is Gavin Newsom doing this routine yesterday.
I said it a moment ago, wake up, America, wake up. You will not have a country if he rigs this election. You will have a president who will be running for a third term. Mark my word. I wasn't exaggerating when I said that I received in the mail a Trump 2028 hat from one of his biggest supporters. These guys are not screwing around. The rules do not apply to him. The most corrupt president in history.
Okay, guys, I think we need to send Gavin Newsom a Trump 2036 hat. Just because obviously, if somebody sent him as a joke a Trump 2028 hat and he took it seriously, let's go further than that. Trump 2040 hat. We need to make one and we need to send it to California Governor Gavin Newsom because the dude cannot take a joke. Or alternatively, he knows full well that's not going to happen. And he's scaremongering because he wants to run for president. Okay, well, this culminated yesterday in ICE agents showing up outside Newsom's presser on redistricting. Already coming up, ICE agents showed up outside Gavin Newsom's ridiculous event. Plus, President Trump prepares for a meeting with President Putin, and Isabel Brown sticks around in order for us to talk about Taylor Swift and all the rest. A lot going on. First, data brokers, those invasive tech companies, they spy on your online activity, they compromise your freedom, they monitor every click, action, and word, and then they compile and sell this information to corporations and foreign governments. These entities don't care about your welfare. That's why we use ExpressVPN, a company dedicated to protecting you from these big brother surveillance operations. With ExpressVPN, your entire online activity flows through secure encrypted tunnels, ensuring complete privacy. No one, not data brokers, big tech companies, even your internet provider, can track your online behavior. ExpressVPN masks your IP address, the digital identifier that enables data brokers to collect and sell your information to questionable companies. For U.S. customers, ExpressVPN's new Identity Defender feature removes your data from brokers' databases, monitors the dark web for your compromised information, and alerts you to unauthorized social security number usage. I use ExpressVPN all the time. I use it when I'm at home. I use it when I'm abroad. I'm using it because very often I'm on public Wi-Fi. There are a lot of problems with public Wi-Fi. ExpressVPN solves all of them. Using ExpressVPN is about defending your fundamental right to privacy. Protect yourself with ExpressVPN today. Right now, you can get an extra 4 months for free when you use my special link. Go to expressvpn.com/Ben. Get 4 extra months of ExpressVPN. That's expressvpn.com/Ben. Also, how many times have you told somebody, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Well, that's great advice for most things, but not for your cell phone, because your cell phone just kind of naturally degrades. The battery life fades. The processor can't keep up. Maybe you dropped it and ran over it with the car. Fortunately, thanks to Pure Talk, your cell phone is something you can replace without feeling guilty about it. When you switch to Pure Talk this month, they're going to give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan. Just $35 a month for talk, text, data, and a free Samsung phone with scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass and a battery that lasts all day long. All on America's most dependable 5G network. I use Pure Talk all the time. Obviously, my calls are important to me. Your calls are important to you. I'm vouching for them. They're great. Look, supporting companies like Pure Talk, it's a good thing. You're going to win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans. Make that switch in as little as 10 minutes. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro to get your free phone today. Again, that's puretalk.com/Shapiro to switch to my wireless company, America's wireless company, Pure Talk. Go check them out right now. puretalk.com/Shapiro to switch on over. According to Mediaite, federal immigration officials detained at least one person outside of Governor Gavin Newsom's speech on Thursday, discussing the Texas push to redistrict its congressional map, according to the local news. Newsom's office posted images of ICE agents outside the event. And then he wrote, "Trump's private army is illegally on private property. We will not be intimidated by this weak little man." 3 exclamation points, all capital letters. Oh, he's so tiresome. He's so unbelievably tiresome. Apparently, U.S. Border Patrol Sector Commander Gregory Bovino spoke to NBC Los Angeles and told them they were, quote, conducting roving immigration enforcement patrols in the area, and one person was taken into custody. The report added that the video filmed in the area showed masked U.S. Border Patrol agents taking a man into custody near several federal buildings in the area, one of which includes a detention center. So Gavin Newsom told the crowd, apparently, that it was not a coincidence. He said, Donald Trump's minions, Tom Homan, decided this was the location. They'd advance. Donald Trump, you have poked the bear. We will punch back. Punching bears. That's where we are at this point. Just great. Here is the footage of Border Patrol outside the presser on redistricting.
Border Patrol has arrived just outside of the downtown LA venue where Governor Gavin Newsom was actually holding a press conference today. And it appears that those Border Patrol agents are making arrests, illegal immigrants that I don't know if they were at this press conference, if they were in the area, but this is a very, as John put it when we first saw this video, a very in-your-face way to let, Democrats know that you are going to do your job, that you're going to carry out these Trump policies.
Well, the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was on Fox News as this footage was airing, and here's what she had to say about the situation.
Every single one of our ICE and Border Patrol operations is built on information, on investigative work. It's a case and an operation that has been planned because of who they think could be in that area and what they have for information that shows that there are illegal criminals there. Remember, we're focusing on the worst of the worst. So I don't know specific to what information that they had for that operation that they planned today, but it was based on the investigative work that all law enforcement officers do for every single operation they conduct to make sure that they're getting dangerous criminals off our streets.
Okay, so apparently this was not enough for Democrats. Democrats, it is amazing. If President Trump came out in favor of getting rid of cancer, if he started some sort of Operation Warp Speed to fight cancer, Democrats would come out in favor of cancer. I have zero doubt about this. It is amazing. They are coming out in favor of crime, illegal immigration, and every other 80-20 issue. They are taking the 20% simply if Trump takes the 80% issue, and in the dumbest possible way. So, in what has to amount to the stupidest protest I have ever seen. Yesterday, there was a man whose name is Sean Charles Dunn, who approached law enforcement officers in Washington, D.C. and began yelling obscenities and calling them fascists. And then, if you can't see this video, he is holding a sandwich and he chucks his sandwich at one of the officers and then tries to take off down the street. He looks like he's coming straight from his golf game at the local club. He's wearing like a pink polo shirt or pink button down, and then he just chucks his sandwich, and now he takes off down the street with the grace of a gazelle, and the officers start chasing him. He's kind of loping down the sidewalk. By the way, this is not like an urgent run. These people are not fast. I gotta say, training at Border Patrol, we need some track training for Border Patrol. If it took them this long to run this guy down. This guy takes the sandwich, chucks it at the Border Patrol agent. Now he's resisting by losing his lunch. He also broke the very first rule of Jussie Smollett. Never throw the Subway sandwich. Hold on to that thing for dear life. Well, apparently, it's not just this schmuck who was throwing sandwiches. Maybe it wasn't a very good sandwich. I don't know. There's a lot left of that sandwich. I feel like it's not a good use of food. It's like the food fight from Hook. But anyway, he throws the sandwich at the Border Patrol agent. It turns out that this guy is a DOJ employee. Great. So you have Justice Department employees who are now assaulting federal law enforcement with sandwiches. Sandwiches are beautiful. Sandwiches are fine. According to the Washington Post, in court documents filed on Wednesday, police allege that Sean Charles Dunn approached law enforcement officers, including Metro Transit Police and U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers, and began yelling obscenities and calling them fascists. And then he threw a sandwich at one of the officers. He was charged with assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers and employees of the United States. And then after his arrest, Dunn allegedly told one of the officers, quote, "I did it. I threw a sandwich." Slow clap for you, sir. Hero of the day. You tossed your lunch. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, posted on X, "If you touch any law enforcement officer, we will come after you. This is an example of the deep state we have been up against for 7 months as we work to refocus the DOJ." And apparently he will be charged with a felony. He was a paralegal and worked as an international affairs specialist in the criminal division of the DOJ. So he could do up to 8 years in prison. He won't, obviously. He gave only a few brief answers to the magistrate judge's questions, but smiled as he conferred with his defense attorney after the court agreed to release him on his own recognizance for now. So apparently the government sent 20 police officers to his home. Apparently he's an Air Force veteran. The lawyer said he did absolutely the most responsible thing by trying to surrender. Well, that is solid stuff. So apparently the reason this got caught on tape is because a person on Instagram saw this person shouting at Border Patrol and they turned on their phone, and then he chants shame, and then he walks back and heaves a sandwich at the officers. So solid stuff there from Democrats and their allies in the DOJ, who will no longer have a job. Meanwhile, the federal government continues to, arrest human traffickers in Los Angeles. This is who they are arresting. Here's some footage.
In a partnered investigation, including the DOJ, Homeland Security, and LAPD, 11 suspects across LA were targeted in a RICO case. At a downtown motel used to allegedly sell women, federal agents surrounded one of their 11 suspects and took him into custody. Police say during the operation, they also rescued 4 victims, including a minor. Federal investigators say a female, Amaya Armstead, who goes by the street name Lady Duck, was a lead target and prolific human trafficker. Her moniker even tattooed on at least 4 victims' bodies.
We must throw sandwiches in order to protect these people. Seems great. And Democrats are doing a wonderful job of taking every 20% issue. Speaking of which, in Washington, D.C., President Trump has been utilizing federal law enforcement and federalization of the police forces to get rid of gigantic homeless encampments. On Thursday, according to the Washington Post, President Trump promised to have the crime situation in D.C. solved very soon. Pam Bondi, the AG, has directed D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and the police department to submit to a new governing structure with Terry Cole, a Trump appointee, as the emergency police commissioner. Apparently, a White House official says federal operations will run 24 hours a day, rather than simply focusing on nighttime hours, and will target high crime areas and known hotspots. There were also stepped up efforts to address the tents and other visible signs of homelessness that have long seized President Trump's attention. By the way, for quality of life, you should not have to live in a city where homeless encampments overrun every sidewalk and every underpass. Public parks should not just be gigantic homeless encampments. That's what LA turned into, and it was a bleep show. It was terrible. I'd go to the park with my kids. There'd be open needles everywhere. It was insane. President Trump spoke from the Oval Office, and he said that National Guard troops can make a meaningful difference because he says they're common sense. They're very tough people. And by the way, it is true. Are you going to go and commit a crime right in front of the National Guard? It turns out that presence in high crime areas deters crime. This is not a gigantic shock. Now, National Guard members are not armed. They're not going to be conducting law enforcement activities. They're not going to be arresting people because that is not what they are empowered to do. However, nobody is going to be messing around by violating the law right in front of the National Guard. That'd be a dumb move because they are working in concert with local law enforcement. Apparently, the National Park Service also regularly cleared homeless encampments on federal land in the district. Caroline Levitt has said 2 encampments remain in the National Park Service jurisdiction in D.C., and she said the removal of those 2 remaining camps is in fact scheduled for this week. Members of the D.C. Health and Human Services team began clearing an encampment on Thursday morning on a grassy no man's land near the Kennedy Center after giving the residents a day notice to remove their belongings. And they sent a bunch of caterpillars to basically run over whatever tents were remaining and take them away. Well, I mean, that is a good thing. Now, again, this is not a violation of law. This is all in concert with the Home Act of Washington, D.C. It's all in concert with the Constitution of the United States. The Trump administration is also going to be utilizing federal law enforcement to effectuate immigration policy in Washington, D.C. in a stricter way. So President Trump, according to Axios, has deployed the National Guard to L.A., sent the National Guard to the southern border, and he's going to target 5 other Democrat-led cities in a campaign against crime. Federal officers aren't generally doing civilian law enforcement, but they are going to be able to back up local law enforcement. The Posse Comitatus Act prohibits federal military troops from participating in civilian law enforcement. The Insurrection Act is the primary exception that allows, in cases of riot or insurrection, for the National Guard to be activated to do that sort of stuff. But FBI agents are helping to arrest civilians, according to a post from FBI Director Kash Patel. And when it comes to the National Guard, they do have broad latitude, according to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. And in the event that police officers aren't around, Guard members will have their back to ensure they can take the necessary action to protect the citizens of D.C. So, again, it is more about putting additional boots on the ground. That is the goal. Now, amazingly, Democrats have again decided that apparently crime and homelessness are good, or at least not a big deal. Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, he says, there's no way in hell that we are going to congressionally extend federal authority in Washington, D.C. Well, he's not going to have much of a say about it because this is going to go along party line votes.
If he went to Congress and said, you know what, there's this crime emergency, we need the National Guard out there longer, we need to take over Washington, D.C., would you grant it?
No way. We'll fight him tooth and nail. And right now, as you said, he can only do it for 30 days, or now I guess it's 26 or 27, whatever. And he needs to get Congress to approve it. And not only are we not going to approve it, but I have there are some Republicans who don't like it either.
Yeah, no, that's not going to be a thing. Already coming up, the Democrats cannot break with Zohran Mamdani. That's because they agree with Zohran Mamdani. Plus, we'll have Isabel Brown on to talk about Taylor Swift's new album. I know, it's actually like a thing people care about. First, you know what's hard to live without? A solid pair of boots that won't let me down. And that's why I go with Tecovas. Now, do I look like a boots guy? Do I look like somebody who could pull off boots? Well, I can because of Tecovas. The thing about being confident isn't about trying to be different. It's about being yourself and making Western traditions your own. What I love about Tecovas is they craft quality boots for everybody, whether you're a lifelong cowboy or a first-time boot buyer. Every boot is handcrafted with over 200 steps, so you get that broken-in comfort and quality right out of the box. They've even got professional-grade work boots and other leather goods beyond just boots. Whether it's a long day or a big night, if you want something that's built to last and impress, Tecovas are the best option on the market because there's no compromise between quality and style. My Tecovas, they're excellent. I wear them because, they like a man, like a Western man. Also, they're just great. They're comfortable. Plus, with Tecovas' Best in the West guarantee, you get free returns and exchanges for 30 days right now. Get 10% off at tecovas.com/Shapiro when you sign up for email and text. That's 10% off at tecovas.com/Shapiro, tecovas.com/Shapiro. See site for details. Tecovas, point your toes west. Also, now there is something called choice paralysis. Have you ever been to a restaurant and the menu is like 8 pages long and they're not making everything well? Well, the same thing applies if you're a business owner who's hiring. It can be overwhelming to have so many candidates to sort through, but you are in luck. ZipRecruiter now gives you the power to proactively find and connect with the best ones quickly. How? Through their innovative resume database. And right now, you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/dailywire. ZipRecruiter's resume database makes it easy to find the right people for your job openings by letting you filter through candidates quickly to spot the best matches. When you see someone who catches your eye, you can get their contact details right away to reach out. With over 320,000 new resumes being added every month, you'll have plenty of fresh talent to choose from, which means you can fill your positions faster. It's no surprise ZipRecruiter has become the highest-rated hiring site on G2. Here at the Daily Wire, we're always looking for top talent, so we're always using ZipRecruiter. Having those great features that ZipRecruiter offers makes hiring a breeze for any business owner, big or small. Skip the candidate overload. Instead, streamline your hiring with ZipRecruiter. See why 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within day one. Just go to this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire right now. Try it for free. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Meanwhile, Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, he says this is all an illegitimate power grab.
I stand with the people of Washington, D.C. I stand with Mayor Bowser, and we are strongly supporting their efforts to stop this scheme to take over the police department in the District of Columbia, which is nothing more than an illegitimate power grab.
I mean, it's unbelievable. It truly is. Trump comes out about against crime and illegal immigration, and the Democrats are like, we love them. They're great. I mean, this is why Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, again, he has some of the most sort of colorful euphemisms in Congress for sure. Here's Senator Kennedy on Fox talking about Schumer and Jeffries.
Chucky Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, they are, quote, minority leaders in name only. They'll never stand up to that wing, will they?
No, but they could. And I don't mean any disrespect. I don't know Mr. Jeffries that well. I know Senator Schumer very well. So I say this with respect. Chuck and Hakeem need to go to Amazon, buy some testicles, and stand up to the loon wing of their party.
Yeah, well, they're not going to. They're not going to. The blue wing of the party owns the party at this point. And again, these are losing issues for Democrats. Harry Enten over at CNN broke down the polling on crime. It turns out that President Trump is quite popular on crime because people don't like crime. I know this is a big shocker to Democrats, apparently. People do not like crime. In fact, they will leave areas where crime has become endemic for areas where it has not. It was one of the main factors in my family moving from California to Florida. It's one of the things I brag to all my California friends. Again, last time I was in Los Angeles, my friends were effectively carjacked in front of us, like a block away. It was crazy. People don't like that. People don't want to live in those areas. All they want, this is basically the one thing that local government must do is guarantee the safety and security of its law-abiding citizens. And if you won't do that, then you don't deserve to be in office. Here is Harry Enten discussing President Trump on crime.
I think this sort of gives the game away here because Donald Trump is like Air Jordan towering over Joe Biden when it comes to their handling of crime. Look, in 2024, look at where Biden's net approval was on crime. Way underwater there at minus 26 points. It was one of Biden's worst issues. Granted, pretty much every issue was one of Biden's worst issues. And again, look at where Donald Trump is. Way, way, way above Joe Biden. What is that? That's 27 points. So Americans vastly prefer Donald Trump's approach to crime than they did to Joe Biden's.
And Democrats are so ensconced in their woke, they can't get out. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who, again, by our friends and sponsors over Perplexity, is the mayor with the lowest approval rating in all of America, says that what's really happening here when Trump is fighting crime and illegal immigration is that he is intimidated by the intellectual prowess of black men, which is a hell of a take. Honest to God, I'm not sure how he's getting here, but I too am astonished by his intellectual prowess.
Let me just answer that. I do appreciate you begging. So I would just say it like this, that the president has always been intimidated by the intellectual prowess of black men. And so, of course, he would speak in those petite and puerile terms.
Well, probably the Democratic Party should follow his lead. And they are in New York. So yesterday, Zohran Mamdani went to Staten Island to campaign. He, of course, is the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York. He's likely to be the next mayor of New York because no one can get their act together on the other side of the aisle to consolidate. And there continue to be 3 candidates, none of whom is going to be mayor. If 2 of the others don't drop out and at least create some sort of fighting chance here, Mamdani is likely to win anyway. We went to Staten Island, which, of course, is a redder area of New York. And some of the constituents were yelling at him because it turns out that they may not want their city completely taken over by communism.
Sorry, I want something to eat. I would like something to eat. Let me tell you something, man. You are not welcome in this island. October 7th, Jew hater. You fucking Jew hater. Hey, Mr. Mamdani, can I talk to you? This is my island. You're not welcome here. Fuck. Excuse me. You hate Jews. You hate this country. You hate this big shot full of Tom Holman. Go home.
But the Democratic Party continues to romance Zoran Mamdani. Piece by Mara Gay, writing for the New York Times. Some Democrats panicked over Mamdani. Obama called him. Well, I'm sure Obama did. Obama is Mamdani. He is. He was a community organizer with no history of gainful employment, who then went into the Senate for 2 years and then ran for president of the United States. And all of his policy prescriptions basically mirrored Mamdani's. He and Mamdani alike think of America as an exploitative colonialist state. On planet Earth, think of capitalism as a problem. So, of course, Obama called Mamdani because they are two peas in a pod. The new attempt to retcon Barack Obama into some sort of glorious moderate is insane. He was a radical president who broke the country in a wide variety of ways. But according to Mara Gay, former President Barack Obama, the last Democrat to captivate the party's base, got on the phone. In a lengthy call in June, Mr. Obama congratulated Mr. Mamdani, offered him advice about governing, and discussed the importance of giving people hope in a dark time, according to people with knowledge of the conversation. Others in Mr. Obama's orbit have also shown a keen interest in Mr. Mamdani and his campaign. John Favreau, who served as Mr. Obama's speechwriter, and Dan Pfeiffer, a former senior advisor, have been in communications with Democratic strategist Morris Katz, among Mr. Mamdani's closest aides. David Axelrod was also curious. Axelrod said, "What I found when I went over to that office was a familiar spirit that I hadn't seen in a while of just determined, upbeat idealism. You may not agree with every answer he's giving or every idea he has, but he's certainly asking the right questions, which is how do we make the country work for working people?" Wow. He asked the right questions, but he has all the wrong answers. But that's fine because he has energy. Our politics are so broken, man. They are so broken. The Democrats have no systemic immunity to the socialist idiocy of Zoran Mamdani. Andrew Ross Sorkin over on CNBC had on Hakeem Jeffries, and he asked him about Mamdani's policies. And I will say that Hakeem Jeffries, that dude, he's like Fred Astaire. He can tap dance. Here we go.
Don't try to devastate
I understand
them,
that.
which is
I'm
what
just
the
curious
Republican plan is right now.
I'm curious where you land on things like, freezing rent, free buses, giving away, free food at supermarkets and the like, and what you just think of that idea and what it represents.
Listen, Zoran is going to have to make the case to the people of New York City, including in the neighborhoods that I represent, that these ideas, which are designed to address affordability in New York City, and that as a top-line effort is important. The cost of living is the number one issue here in the city, number one issue across the country. It's why Donald Trump's poll numbers are in the basement.
You may have noticed there was no answer to the question, what do you think of his policies? Well, he's going to have to, go out and talk about them. Cool. Well, Sorkin pressed some more, and again, didn't go amazing.
Do you agree with those approaches as a solution? Look, you and I agree. Affordability is this number one issue in New York. It's the number one issue in the country. And so he has done a great job of identifying that issue and articulating that issue. The question is how you attack that issue. And what I'm asking you is whether you agree with the solutions that he's offering.
Here's what my solution would be. And I've said this directly to him, and will continue to say it to policymakers across the city, the state, and the country. We have a situation in New York City and across America where the demand for housing that is affordable greatly exceeds the supply. That's a problem. That imbalance is jamming people up.
So that was still not an answer to the question, but that's the entire Democratic pitch here, is say socialist things and then run away from the implications of the socialist things. Now, the problem is they have real world impact. According to the Wall Street Journal, blue states are hunting for ways to wring more taxes from the wealthy. Well, I mean, we're down here in Florida. Come to us. Come to us. Come to the grip of a state that has a 0% income tax and a very friendly business environment. You can all come down here. We are happy to take you. Don't bring your politics. Leave those back in New York. Leave those back in Delaware. Bring some new politics that don't wreck your state and come on down. Move, make your voices heard with your feet. Take your businesses out of these states. That is what's going to happen. According to the Wall Street Journal, a growing number of blue cities and states across the country, from Washington state to Rhode Island, are looking at ways to wring more revenue from their richest taxpayers. Lawmakers are boosting tax rates on robust annual incomes, hiking capital gains taxes, and putting new levies on luxury vacation homes. Minnesota State Representative Aisha Gomez, a Democrat, who has sponsored legislation that would implement a higher tax rate for joint filers in Minnesota, making over $1 million a year if federal Medicaid cuts take effect, says, quote, this is an attempt to acknowledge that people who are being richly rewarded by the economy in its current form are people who are going to disproportionately benefit from the bill passed by Congress. Many legislators are considering potential taxes on rich residents of their states. And they have been inspired by billions of dollars Massachusetts has collected since it implemented an income surtax on those who earn more than $1 million per year. Connecticut is proposing a bill that would raise income tax rates on couples who make at least $500,000 to offset expected federal funding losses from the new federal tax law. Maryland Governor Wes Moore in May signed into law his tax proposal, which includes higher income tax rates for state residents who make more than $500,000 a year to close a budget deficit. Rhode Island is going to do the same. Well, again, we welcome you all down to a state that does not want to steal your money for the purposes of venal politicians. Already coming up, Isabel Brown stops by. We discuss Taylor Swift, among other things. Plus, President Trump heads to Alaska to meet with Vladimir Putin. We'll go into what that means. First, what does feeling safe at home really mean? Well, I used to think good locks and a loud alarm were enough, and then I realized real security is not about responding to threats, but preventing them in the first place. And that's why I use SimpliSafe for proactive protection that keeps my studio and employees secure before anything can happen. Most security systems only spring into action after somebody has already broken in. By then, it's likely too late. SimpliSafe's new Active Guard outdoor protection actually stops break-ins before they happen. Their AI-powered cameras work with live monitoring agents who can spot suspicious activity around your property in real time. If someone's lurking where they shouldn't be, agents can talk directly to them, flip on spotlights, and call police if needed, all before anything happens to your home. There are no contracts, no hidden fees to worry about. It's easy to see why over 4 million Americans trust SimpliSafe. CNET named it the best home security system of 2025. Newsweek and USA Today ranked them #1 for customer service. Plus, monitoring plans start at around just $1 a day. They back it all up with a 60-day money-back guarantee. SimpliSafe is great, keeps my staff safe, keeps all of our stuff here at the studio safe. Visit simplisafe.com/Shapiro right now. Claim 50% off a new system with professional monitoring plan. Get that first month for free. That's simplisafe.com/Shapiro. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Well, joining us on the line to discuss all the problems with Gen Z is the author of a book about Gen Z and, of course, a Daily Wire host, Isabel Brown. Her book is The End of the Alphabet, which is all about Generation Z and its vicissitudes. Isabel, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me back, Ben. So psyched to be here.
So let's start by asking, what the hell is going on with Gen Z's support for Zoran Mamdani? I have my own theories, but I want to hear yours since you're much closer to that generation than I am at this point.
It's a great question. And honestly, I have to think that the media is pushing a very strong narrative about Gen Z being all in on Mamdani for a reason. Newsweek magazine just ran a headline that apparently he is the key to recapturing all of the young men that Republicans and conservatives made substantial inroads with for the 2024 election. I don't fully buy that, but I do think there is a bit of renewed interest in the left because of Mamdani being radically different from the rest of the left-wing political lineup, especially in New York City. If your other options are Cuomo, who've been in political offices as a family for a very, very long time, or Eric Adams, something new with new ideas is somewhat appealing to young people across the board. Now, those new ideas are terrible and are probably going to burn New York City to the ground, but I think it speaks volumes as to what young people are looking for to shake up the status quo and why Donald Trump was so appealing to them to begin with.
Well, one of the things that's sort of fascinating about Gen Z is, of course, this gigantic sex split between girls and boys, men and women in Gen Z. Men are trending, apparently, according to the polls, more Republican, although they seem to be sort of moving back to the mean, regressing to the mean. Women tend to be moving significantly more to the left and very, very quickly to the left. What's going on with Gen Z women?
You know, interestingly, that is the narrative. And typically when you see these graphs go major viral on X or Instagram or YouTube, I think there is this narrative that young women are overwhelmingly becoming radically more leftist, while Gen Z men are becoming extremely conservative. We know that young men are the most conservative generation we've seen in my lifetime. And for the first time, young men under 35 are more conservative than the oldest generation that is currently alive for the last several generations, which I think is really fascinating. But people are forgetting to mention that young women are also shifting substantially to the right, just not quite on pace with what we're seeing with young men. From 2020 to 2024, for example, young women exit polling for women under the age of 35 voting shifted 11 points away from the Democrat Party towards the Republican Party in just one presidential election cycle. And notably, this was during an election where young women were told you are only allowed to vote for the candidate that shares your genitalia and campaigns on the supposed women's right to end the life of your preborn child. So there are substantial inroads that are happening with young women. The media is just refusing to cover that, and it's not happening at the snowball pace quite as quickly as it is with young men.
Well, Isabel, you follow culture much more closely than I do because, again, I'm old. But when it comes to the culture, the biggest news of the cultural moment is, of course, Taylor Swift has a new announcement about her new album. I did talk about this very briefly on the show. And by briefly, I mean I spent 27 seconds, I believe, on it because that's how important it is to my life. But apparently, it's important to hundreds of millions of people that she has a new album out, something about the story of a showgirl or something. And she announced this on her boyfriend's podcast, Travis Kelce. It is sort of fascinating to watch the evolution of her public image because of Travis Kelce. And I think it does say something kind of vaguely political because, my rip on Taylor Swift has been that she's now, 35 years old, and she's cosplaying as a 16-year-old girl all the time about her failed relationships and about how everyone has wronged her. And meanwhile, she's a billionaire in what appears to be a relatively healthy relationship. And so I've been rooting for them to get married and have kids, actually. I think it'd be very good for America. We can start the Taylor Swift baby boom. But what is the story with her and Travis Kelce? Why is this important? What is her new album going to be?
Despite only dedicating 27 seconds there, Ben, I think you actually have quite an accurate read on the cultural impact of this. I am not a diehard Swiftie that would sell my car for tickets to the Eras Tour like many people were going viral for over the last few years. But I like Taylor Swift. I always have growing up. I think the last truly great album was 1989. I was a senior in high school, and gosh, the vibes of that album are just totally unmatched, which allegedly we're going to get similar pop star music in this new album coming out October 3rd, The Life of a Showgirl. But zooming in on this interview and why this is such an interesting cultural moment right now, Taylor Swift has never appeared publicly on a red carpet with one of her boyfriends. She's certainly never done a long-form interview, podcasting at all, but certainly with one of her significant others throughout history. And she has a totally different energy about her than what I think she's been pretty famous for over the last 10 years or so, being the kind of cutting-edge liberal women leader of whatever we're seeing with this cultural moment. She's done lots of political statements over the past few years on social media and in documentaries, but she had a very different energy that she was putting out during this podcast episode that came out early this week. By the way, is almost at 15 million views in just over 24 hours, on track to be the most viewed single podcast episode ever of all time. She seems happy and content and relaxed and comfortable in her life for the first time that I've ever noticed, certainly throughout her career as a musician. And I think a lot of that has to do with her relationship dynamic with a pretty masculine man, an NFL player who is constantly talking about sports, has this podcast with his brother that they drink beer on and they talk about sports things all the time. And she's admitting, I never knew anything about this world before I started dating Travis, but now my eyes have been opened and I absolutely love it. And now that the Eras Tour is wrapped up, I spend most of my free time baking sourdough bread in the kitchen, and I absolutely love it. It's the best chapter of my life up to this point. I don't know that she's even fully aware of the political connotation of what all of these statements actually mean, that she's leaning more into her femininity. She's very comfortable dating a pretty masculine man compared to the tortured artists of her dating history. And that's coming through to inspire other young women to do the same thing. But just like we're seeing JoJo Siwa all of a sudden leave lesbianism behind, or Demi Lovato get married and reunite with the Jonas Brothers to make great music again, I think we're watching Hollywood in general start to heal the same way our culture is.
Yeah, Isabel, it'll be fascinating to see if she can carry her audience, because this has always been a conundrum for pop stars as they hit their mid-30s, and much of their brand has been built around sexuality and built around being kind of a single wild girl. And you see that many of these women age out. There's something vaguely pathetic about Madonna still twerking on stage at the age of 70. And even now watching the sort of hatred for Katy Perry in the public mind because of the way that she's gallivanting around, which is she's aged out of this role and she continues to play that role. It'll be interesting to see if Taylor Swift moves in what is a more traditionalist direction with her personal life, what the ramifications are for her listenership. Will people come along with her on a journey to, say, getting married and motherhood?
I sure hope so, and I'm certainly rooting for that. At least Katy Perry has a backup career as a professional astronaut now, but I don't think Taylor Swift has those same inroads to be going to space all the time. But look, I think Taylor Swift is easily the most influential person impacting culture for young women. The economic downstream impact that we've seen from the Eras Tour is unlike anything we've ever seen from the music industry and totally redefined live music as we know it. And I certainly think she can impact the choices that young women are making, realizing, you know, I can have a meaningful relationship. I can commit to someone long term. I can be dating just one person in a culture that's telling me I should be embracing polyamory. And those are good things. They're solid foundations that I can love and appreciate and want to pass on to the next generation as well. So I'm all for Taylor Swift and her sourdough baking, almost trad wife era, being at home with her boyfriend. She seems incredibly happy. And I hope that inspires other young women to do the same thing.
Well, that's Isabel Brown. She, of course, is the host of the Isabel Brown Show, which premieres this fall at the Daily Wire. And you can check out her new book, The End of the Alphabet. And thanks for somehow making a conversation about Taylor Swift palatable to me, considering I did, I believe, a 1 hour and 30-minute review of her last album, The Tortured Poets Department, which was pure torture. You have somehow made this palatable. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
Well, meanwhile, speaking of the culture wars and the left's failure to truly engage on a level that people understand, I have to say I am both bemused and amused by the decision by some NFL teams to now have male cheerleaders. Now, there's a difference between many of the male cheerleaders that you see in college who, you know, are typically buff dudes who chuck ladies in the air. And you see these videos at cheerleading competitions where they're building human pyramids and stuff. And you need some dude who can pick up 300, 400 pounds on his shoulders in order to make that happen. That is one kind of cheerleading. That is not what these NFL cheerleaders are now doing. And I have no idea why these teams are doing this. Apparently, the Minnesota Vikings and the New England Patriots, among others, have decided that they are going to feature male cheerleaders who are basically gallivanting around effeminately like women. That is the goal of these cheerleaders. Again, male cheerleading has been a thing, you know, for 100 years or so, but this is a completely different thing. I mean, take a look at these videos. It's pretty pathetic. Like, they're doing the same dances as the girls. Why? Like, no one wants to see this from a dude. No one. Okay, so they're like dancing around in effeminate poses. And here we got the same thing from the New England Patriot cheerleader. And it's a man dancing like he's a backup dancer at a Madonna concert. Like, well, why? Just why? Yeah, I mean, the NFL is predominantly a male-dominated audience. Guys don't want to watch this. Girls, by the way, don't want to watch this. Like, seriously, how many women are interested in watching a man dancing among the women who's basically cosplaying as a woman? I mean, that is what these dances are. There's a way to do male cheerleading that is not innately effeminate. That is not what this is. And so the fact that they are continuing to do this with the NFL right now is so counter the moment. It really, really is. But it demonstrates that when it comes to the culture wars, the left never sleeps. It really doesn't. By the way, there is something good about male and female stereotypes. Okay, I'm just going to say it. I'm going to put that out there. Male and female are two separate sexual categories in terms of, you know, like biological sex. And it is good that males should be masculine and females should be effeminate. That is it. Females should be feminine. That is a good thing. And cross-pollinating those things is generally not a wonderful thing. Doesn't mean that everybody has to fit into every specific box. But the idea of glorifying men who are dancing like women or women who act like men, that's a bizarre thing for any healthy civilization, because guess what? It turns out that all of human society, including procreation, rests on the sexual dichotomy between men and women. The fact that we even have to say these basic things demonstrates how stupid our society has become, that everything is supposed to be gender neutral, but that's not gender neutral. It isn't. And they're not doing the Charleston there. They're twerking on the field. And I can object, by the way, to cheerleaders generally as well. I think there's a good case to be made that cheerleading as a general spectacle, what it has become, which is effectively people dancing like strippers in skimpy outfits, is ridiculous and should not be publicized. That is a different critique. But the notion that men should be prancing around like women and that somehow this should be celebrated at a very male sport is bizarre, to say the least. And meanwhile, speaking of the culture wars, I have to say we have made an entire generation of people, America and social media, we've made an entire generation of people mentally unwell. Ella Emhoff is the allegedly model stepdaughter of Kamala Harris, and Doug Emhoff is her dad. She put out a video yesterday in which she explained that she was anxious and nervous about climate change. This is just being unwell. Like, this is a person who needs some mental help.
I feel disgust at what's going on in the world around genocides, the loss of rights, the loss of health care, the just general fear that everyone has surrounding affordability, their lives, their livelihood, like everything. It's just, it feels so big. I think everything with the environment is really getting to me. And it is I experience a lot of climate anxiety, like a lot of us do. It's not funny. It's just like, it's one of those things, it's not funny, but you just like nervous laugh about it because it's scary. It is. It's all of these things are happening, and like what besides the small things we can do in pushing for change and fighting and protesting, and it's really hard not to sit in those moments where it just feels so heavy.
Honestly, I kind of feel terrible for her. Like, really, I want to laugh at her, but I kind of feel terrible for her because this is a person who has something going on, like emotionally and mentally. This is not a person who is well. And we've created an entire generation of people who are like this. We really have. People who are anxious, people who are narcissistic, people who think that the apotheosis of living is going to protest, the sun, or the fact that the climate is incrementally changing over the course of the next 100 years and get anxiety about that. It is unwell. It is unhealthy. We have done something to an entire generation of people, and that is the central problem in Western life. It is not affordability. Affordability is downstream of a generation of people who will not move to seek job opportunity outside of New York as a model or a community organizer. And that is an attitudinal problem. And I'm not blaming the people who have the attitudinal problem. I'm blaming a society that's created that attitudinal problem by not demanding that people actually be useful, go and fulfill the roles that make life worth living. People who believe, apparently, that performative politics is the height of human existence. And that is so much of the Democratic Party at this point, the performative politics. This is why you have Jasmine Crockett as the newer, fresher AOC out there suggesting that Republicans are racist. Like, is this what makes you feel good about your life? Truly. Does this make your life better in any way? If you're Democrats, does this make your life better in any way?
I talk to black folk all the time as somebody that's a child of a preacher. Listen, most black people are not Republicans simply because we just is like, y'all racist. I can't hang out with the KKK in them. That's really what it is. But when we think about who we are as black people and we think about where we come from, most black people have very conservative values, right? But the reality is that, like, we just can't side with, like, the neo-Nazis in them. We not dealing with y'all like that, right?
So, again, is this making anybody's life better? Al Sharpton, who's been a grifter his entire career, is sitting 2 seats down, grinning at all of this. Has anybody's life been made better? Particularly black Americans. Are they made better by this sort of rhetoric? Are women made better by the insanity of people like Ella Emhoff promoting climate anxiety? When did we decide that we don't need to make people's lives better by actually demanding that they do the things that make you healthy and happy? That is the part that's insane. We'd rather just pose. And we'd also promote false history in order, presumably, to somehow make that pose, more serious? So Jillian Michaels, who has become somewhat conservative, was a host with the Bill Maher podcast network for a bit. Well, she was on CNN yesterday, and she was ripped up and down by the left for making what is a clearly and obviously true point, which is that slavery is not unique to America. Again, one of the aspects of the left in America is this belief that America is uniquely evil, that we live in a uniquely terrible time, capitalism is bad, and all the rest. Well, Jillian Michaels somehow slavery came up, and she made the perfectly obvious point which is that white people are not responsible for all slavery on planet Earth. And in fact, white people basically solved slavery on planet Earth as much as it could be solved. It was white Christian countries that did away with slavery and fought it literally everywhere. Slavery was legal in Arab countries up until the late 20th century. It is still practiced in many Arab countries today. It is still practiced in parts of Africa today. And here's Jillian Michaels making some of these points. She got ripped up online for this.
So we're now literally reviewing parts of American history and parts of American culture to make sure it comports with Dear Leader and what the MAGA
Can we address
wants.
some of those things that are in there? Because have you looked at some of the things that are being reviewed?
Slavery was a bad thing that was to talk about.
Okay.
Like, he forgives
He's not whitewashing slavery. So
he's not?
He's not. No.
Okay.
He's not. And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. But let's talk about the fact that when you
can't tie slavery.
let's talk about the fact.
Slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were
Do you know
the slave
who
owners.
was the first race to
I didn't
try
realize
to
this was
end slavery?
controversial.
Well, what's controversial?
I'm very surprised.
This is an extraordinary exercise in historical revisionism.
I'm really surprised.
Do you realize that?
Jillian, I'm surprised that you're trying to litigate who was the beneficiary of slavery and who was not.
What I'm trying to tell you is
in
that
the context of American history. Okay. In the context of American history, what are you saying is incorrect by saying that it was white people oppressing black people?
Every single thing is like, oh, no, this is all because white people bad. And that's just not the truth.
Okay, well, what she is saying there happens to be the case. Okay, that is true. Yes, white slavery, white people holding slaves in America was evil and wrong. And it was also white people in America who abolished slavery in America and expended hundreds of thousands of lives in doing so. It was white Americans at the founding who actually were precursors to the British Empire getting rid of slavery. Again, this sort of running down of America is emblematic of a broader attempt to treat America as something uniquely bad. The situation in which we find ourselves is the product of something uniquely evil. And it's depressing and ridiculous, and it makes people insane. And meanwhile, in actual news, the president of the United States is up in Alaska. He is set to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin today. He has brought basically his entire team. Well, the Russians showed up as well, and they decided to, lead off with a pretty audacious statement because Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, arrived at this event wearing a USSR t-shirt. It's a CCCP shirt, which is USSR in Russian. That is a hell of a take here by Sergei Lavrov. Now remember, when Vladimir Zelensky showed up to the White House wearing military fatigues, this was the end of the world. I mean, we should have something to say about Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, showing up in a CCCP shirt. There he is walking in. I mean, that is a clearly coordinated move, right? I mean, he's not doing that by accident. I don't think that Sergei Lavrov just walks around in USSR shirts randomly. So what exactly is to be gained from these talks? Well, apparently, according to Caroline Leavitt over at the White House, President Trump wants to look Vladimir Putin in the eye and try to figure out exactly what it is that he wants.
What comes after that meeting is up to President Trump, and that's part of the reason he is going. He has incredible instincts, and he wants to sit down and look the Russian president in the eye and see what progress can be made to move the ball forward, to end this brutal war, and to restore peace.
Now, again, the goal for Vladimir Putin here is to presumably stall, because he believes that the longer he stalls, the more a chance that the West falls out of this war. He also would love some sort of major territorial concession pushed by the United States on Ukraine without any significant security guarantees for Ukraine, which is going to be undoable. According to the Wall Street Journal, face-to-face talks between President Trump and Vladimir Putin on Friday will give the Russian president a chance to pitch his conditions for peace, chief among them for Ukraine to hand over swaths of its territory. Putin has long coveted the south and east of Ukraine, which his army has failed to fully occupy. President Trump has said he would seek to negotiate a swap that would return some of the territory Russia occupies back to Ukraine without offering further details. The Kremlin has declared 5 occupied regions to be part of Russia. That'd be Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea. Of those regions, Russia currently fully occupies Crimea, almost all of Luhansk, and much of the other 3. What he would like is a bunch of territory he has not yet won, including Zaporizhia, a remaining section of Donetsk, and part of Kherson. Kherson is about 70% occupied. He wants the other 30%. Zaporizhia, he wants another 27%. And Donetsk, he wants another 24% or so. Donetsk is his top target, but his military is having a tough time taking the rest of Donetsk. Now, one of the reasons why Ukraine is hesitant to give up a lot of this territory, aside from the fact that this is a foreign invasion of their sovereign nation, is the fact that much of this area is mineral and oil rich. And so one of the reasons that Putin wants to grab it and hold on to it is because he believes he is taking away a lot of the economic base of Ukraine in grabbing and holding this territory. Apparently, President Trump and Putin are set to hold a joint press conference after the summit. The summit is to be held at the joint base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage. President Trump thinks that Putin is going to make a deal, according to Fox News Radio, but he says there's a 25% chance talks will fail, describing the summit as a chess game. And if the meeting went well, President Trump raised the possibility of inviting Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky for further negotiations. He said that the first meeting will be setting the table. He would like to have a trilateral meeting. He said it would be certainly convenient if we had a very good meeting because I'm going to let them negotiate their deal. I'm not going to negotiate their deal for them. But of course, the goal of Putin is to get Trump to do that. And Putin thinks he's going to be able to sort of leverage President Trump into doing that. Very high stakes stuff here. Caroline Leavitt at the White House. She says no foreign policy expert has solved a foreign policy conflict, which happens to be the truth of recent vintage.
You're being very kind, and I won't be so kind, and I'll just name some of those people, such as John Bolton, who I think has made a disgrace of himself on television and in the newspapers, claiming that he knows better than President Trump. No, he doesn't, and neither do any of these so-called foreign policy experts who have never solved a foreign policy conflict in their lives. Look at what this president has done in 6 months. He has stopped 7 global conflicts all around the world, using the leverage of the United States of America to negotiate these conflicts to an end. You had the leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia at the White House last week, both of whom said this would not have been possible without the leadership of President Trump and his administration. So the American people trust this president. That's why they overwhelmingly reelected him. And I think it's pathetic, some of the chatter that we see from these so-called experts who have zero accomplishments on their own resumes to point to.
Okay, so, we will find out whether President Trump is able to negotiate anything of substance at this meeting, or whether it just ends up being a platform for Vladimir Putin, or whether the conflict just sort of continues apace. Now, meanwhile, yesterday, there was some negative inflation news for the president of the United States. According to the Wall Street Journal, wholesale prices, that would be the cost of goods and services purchased directly from producers, rose at the sharpest monthly rate in 3 years, raising fresh alarm that tariffs are taking root in the economy and pushing up inflation. So far, retailers have been eating that cost, and they're not passing it on to consumers quite as of yet, presumably in the hopes that those wholesale prices will go down at some point in the near future. Or it's possible that demand is already falling off and they don't have the ability to raise prices on consumers and have to eat that cost, which then presumably would result in a business slowdown. The data complicates the picture for an anticipated interest rate cut over at the Federal Reserve's next meeting in September, nudging the central bank's inflation gauge in the wrong direction. Prices charged by U.S. manufacturers and service providers rose by 0.9% month over month in July, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The increase spanned prices of wholesale goods from food to tires. Those jumped by 0.7% from a month earlier. The price of business-to-business services were up 1.1% in July versus June. So it'll be interesting to see how, again, the tariffs play through the economy. I've been saying we need to wait. We don't actually know yet what is going to happen, but I do not believe that conventional economics on tariffs, which is that prices, at least in the moment, are going to spike and then come down again probably as demand drops off. It would be shocking if that were wrong in some way here. According to the Wall Street Journal, the producer price data gets worse the closer you look. Goods and services both experience substantial inflation. Goods and services related to business investment in particular are becoming pricier, with the cost of manufacturing equipment rising 0.4% in 1 month and related services 4.5%. Prices for intermediate goods, like components and raw materials, are also on the rise. This isn't showing up in consumer prices so far because many companies entered the Trump tariff era with large cash reserves or wider margins so they can absorb these costs for the time being, but they can't do this forever. Meanwhile, cash lost to paying tariffs or paying tariff-induced higher prices is not available for reinvestment in the business or to return to shareholders. So, again, if the tariffs continue to push up the prices, if that results in no interest rate drop, if it means mortgages stay where they are, that is going to be a problem for President Trump. Again, I think that it's too early for President Trump to change courses, presumably. But I also assume that his team, including Scott Bessent, they have their eye on these economic data and are going to make a move if things move in the wrong direction. Alrighty, folks, as the show continues, we'll get into the latest in the Gaza Strip. We'll also get to the United States discussing taking a stake in Intel. Not a fan of this corporatism in which the federal government is now picking and choosing winners and losers and taking stakes in private companies. Not a big fan at all. Remember, in order to watch, you have to be a member. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.